Hello, my name is Jen, and I am doing a presentation specifically presented to students on the book Networked Social Movements, a Global Trend. And I chose the audience of students specifically because most of the time they're younger and they are more familiar with social media and have been using it for all their life. And just a quick little overview. This is going to cover the periods of 2012 to 2014. And social networks are widespread, and they have the ability to reach very not only widespread but diverse regions. It's enabled by digital communication and it is enacted in urban spaces. So basically, it's an online emergence and then can roll out into, being gathering in urban spaces. And the movements often differ in context, but they all share underlying patterns. One of the movements that was highlighted in the chapter was the movement from Ghazi Park in 2013. And basically, the backstory behind this is there was a park that was primarily utilized for a place for youth, music, art, the LGBT community, and it was slated to be turned into a shopping mall and a theme park for tourists. And it was met with some resistance, and there were some protests that formed via social media. But how it gained a lot of momentum was when images were posted on YouTube from the violence by police officers towards the protesters. And once those images got out there, it quickly fueled widespread public outrage. Another movement that was highlighted in the chapter was from Brazil in 2013 to 2014, and it initially started as a protest to increase transportation costs. And it kind of, morphed into a much more broader perspective of the government not having accountability for spending, specifically for soccer stadiums, in infrastructure in general. They had a catchphrase that was associated with the movement that was we would trade one hospital for 10 stadiums. And in the end, from my perception of what I got out of the chapter, the movement wasn't specifically about the money for the new transportation costs, which I think was only 20 cents, which is minimal, but moreover, it was just demand for respect. All right, and a couple more large scale movements that were mentioned. I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but the Chilean student movement, 2011 to 2014, called for changes in the educational system. Mexico's Yo Soy 132 movement aimed for political renewal. And this one, what happened was the students at a college blamed the leader for murders that the police did on a specific community. And while he was, the governor was at this college, the students started, raising their voices and protesting, and he sought refuge in the bathrooms and until he could be escorted out. And with the use of social media, that event was captured, recorded, and uploaded onto social media and went viral fairly quickly, giving fuel and momentum to an exposure for that movement. And then the last one there, the protests in 2014 in Mexico opposing drug-related violence and governmental corruption in Mexico. Okay, and this chapter also went into a couple of other movements in authoritarian contexts. So, yeah, the Moscow demonstrations 2011 to 2012 advocating for democratic rights during Putin's leadership. In Ukraine 2013, nationalist protests taking over Madian Square. And then in Hong Kong 2014, the Umbrella Movement calling for universal voting rights. And continued European mobilizations in Spain, Greece, and Portugal, and they experienced protests connected to crisis of legitimacy. And these movements have extended beyond their original economic causes. And that's kind of a common theme that I've noticed throughout this chapter, is that the initial instance or, motivator for the social movement, the spark, whatever it is that creates the initiation of the movement, it grows to a much broader and bigger political or social issue a lot of the time. And just to go over a couple of the key insights is that these movements, they arise in a very diverse amount of conditions, and it's not solely from crisis or poverty or economic decline. I mean, in Turkey and Brazil and Chile, I mean, those were all during times of economic growth. And others emerge against authoritarianism or financial collapse. And just a couple of contextual factors. So the crisis of political legitimacy is a pretty common theme among network social movements. And these, a couple of instances is because of the broad skepticism towards political parties and institutions. I think that's kind of a worldwide issue. Corruption regarded as pervasive regardless of the regimen type, and also a lot of politicians are viewed as self-interested elite groups rather than having an interest in the population as a whole. And why do people mobilize? Conventional political avenues are often viewed as unresponsive and unproductive. People increasingly use direct, connected methods to express themselves. And digital networks facilitate coordination while public urban spaces offer visibility. So the combination of using both of those two elements is definitely beneficial when wanting to incite social or political change. And in conclusion, network social movements represent new forms of collective action shaped by digital connectivity. They commonly rely on digital coordination, challenge traditional legitimacy, and occupy urban spaces. And, just to bring it back around to why this is important for students is because these movements shape political and social environments, and students have access to social media platforms in order to be involved in social movements. And just a list of my references there. And I want to say thank you for watching this. I feel like I got my way through it. It was a little bit more challenging than I had anticipated. It was a lot bigger project than I had anticipated, but thank you, and I have a good day. Okay.